Fear not, denizens, parade is here, aka the bringer of rain, aka father of the sea and sun, aka king of the core. And today I'm here with my loyal co-host, host of the Celebration Cantina on YouTube, the Wizard of Oscars, Uncle Sheev on twitch.tv. I have none other than Eli from the Fan Awakens. How are you today, sir?
Doing great, especially because I'm so excited to talk about this episode. The Wizard of Oscars, I am stealing that, trademarking it. That was wonderful, so thank you. How are you doing, sir?
You are welcome. I'm doing okay. We'll be completely honest. We're going to pull the curtains back. The Wizard has been revealed. This is the second time we're recording this episode. Hopefully we can keep the energy up because for some reason Palpatine returned and corrupted the last file. So we're going to try our best. We didn't get too far, which is good. But I need to do two things. First, we're going to do housekeeping. Check the description below for the link tree of the Fan Awakens. You can check his blog, Instagram, YouTube. And then for the reigncore links, you got Etsy, you got reigncoreclothing.com. Eli's sporting the Fallout Reigncore shirt. Thank you so much for the support. Etsy, you can find stickers, and my Instagram, where you can find more posts on the YouTube. You can come chat, and even Parade Rainer, where I post costumes. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming in 2025 from both of us. It's going to be a big, big year, especially with us traveling to Tokyo for Star Wars Celebration. We're going to be doing more videos on that too, on both channels, Reigncore and the Fan Awakens. But we are here to talk about episode 3 of the Skeleton Crew. Very interesting as an astrogation problem. Now, Eli, remind me again, please, search your feelings.
Yes.
What did you think about this episode?
I thought this was the best episode so far. It
Nice.
was, for me, I was the most engaged.
Yeah.
I thought it moved pretty quick. It sprinkled a lot of crumbs for us to nibble on as far as the mystery of the story. And the biggest MVP of the show for me is the score. I think it's the best score we've gotten, the most Star Wars score, the most John Williams score outside of John Williams. And I've liked I like the solo score quite a bit.
Okay.
The Rogue One score is pretty good, but
Yeah.
I do think this is this feels Star Wars. It feels John Williams. And I love the score from this episode specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the episode twice. I think you said you watched it also twice. And for me, watching it for the second time, I was able to key more in on the scores and soundtracks. I'm usually not that guy to hear those things. I'm usually just kind of enthralled in the narrative. But I did like that it had kind of those up-tempo swings when the adventure starts. And then it has like that kind of lower parts, especially when there's a scene where he's like kind of trying to find the droids and trying to be like sneaky on the low, and it kind of has that almost like the heist kind of music to it.
Does.
So shout out to Mick Giacchino, son of Michael Giacchino. He's doing good work. He's good doing work. You're doing good, Mick. You're doing good, Mick.
Good pull.
Yeah, thanks. And this episode, I believe, was directed by David Lowery, one of the Daniels. David Lowery. But yeah, it starts out where we're at Atten again, but we're with the parents. It is a city landscape view, and we see a security droid going across the screen, and then he's going up the sidewalk to what I believe is Undersecretary Farr's house, and we see... it's interesting because I thought there was something wrong with my sound, but it's like kind of tuned out because the dad is really thinking about Wim, and it slowly comes in where we're hearing the conversation of the parents.
Or once. Yeah.
He's better at acting with no lines, and hopefully it gets better as we go. But yeah, we have Neil's mom, we have Undersecretary Farr, like we said, and then also KB's moms, and they're very worried. They mentioned something about KB's either visor or something about like or something about her health. I vaguely recall, and they're like, "Oh, now we can't see it anymore. It's off the radar. Like she's too far."
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting that they can key in on that.
Maybe she needs regular charges. I don't know.
That's a good point.
Maybe.
And then they mentioned a couple of things that were interesting. They mentioned the Republic. What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, we kind of mentioned this, but like, I think that the interesting thing with mentioning the Republic and how, you know, they want to appeal this ruling of not being able to reach out to the Republic because they're outside of the barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And with something we learned later in the episode with the kids asking about, like, they don't know about the war,
Right.
with the rebels and the Empire. The question is, and since they have these old Republic chips, credits, what Republic are they talking about? I
Right.
tend to believe they're talking about an older Republic, right? Maybe the Republic of the prequels, possibly older than that, but
Yeah.
it certainly seems like they don't know about, and I mean the adults too. It seems like none of them know really what has gone on in the galaxy. I think they're in truly a bubble, and so it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, because the security droid comes in and he's like, "Hey, we got your request," but the supervisor, who we don't know who the supervisor is yet, says is like, "The kids are past the barrier. There's nothing we can do." Yeah, sorry. And they're like, "Well, maybe we call the Republic," so they know it exists, and that could be either the Galactic Republic, like you said, with the Skywalker films. High Republic could even be the Republic they know of, right, to tie it in back into the Acolyte. Or even if we're talking about Old Republic, 10,000 years before the Skywalker saga. So they mentioned Republic, but no name of era yet. So yeah, it's interesting that even maybe these parents, Undersecretary Farah, is not even aware of what is going on outside of the world of Atten. But they cut back to the kids outside of the brig, and we're with Jude Law, and he is using the Force to distract guards. And Fern is doing Fern things where she's sussing them out. She's saying, she goes, "Why do you need kids' help? Why do you need help?" He said, "Well, I need a ship." Yeah. You guys are talking about a ship. Yeah. I need a ship. He goes, "I waited." He's like, he said, "The Force provided." He's like, "The Force provided."
The Force provided.
Right? Leaning into the faith of the Force, and like Wim's all about it and just like completely trusts this guy. He's like, he's a Jedi. He's like, all Jedis, like, they're defenders, they're keepers of the peace and all these things. He tells them his name. His name's Jod Nana Wood. And it's interesting, someone said that the cadence of Nana Wood is very similar to Atten. So I'm wondering if this is a name that might not be his name. We talked about in the previous recording too, that we find out he has 3 names in this episode. Captain Silvo, he's Crimson Jack, John Nana Wood. But you had thoughts about that too.
Yeah, I do think that for whatever reason, I don't have anything really to base this off of. I do think Jod Nana Wood is his name. I feel like that's his name.
I think so too.
It is. I do think that it is a fun thing when, and I think this will probably be the end of it, but like if every episode he has a new name, like, oh, that's Blue Bill. Like, no, it's Crimson Jack. Oh, that's Jod Nana. If everybody in the galaxy, I do think that could be a funny gag to a degree if it's performed well. But I do think Jod Nana Wood is my man's name. But also I just love that, like, when they're, I don't know, he's savvy to say what Wim wants to hear.
Yes.
Who seems the most enthusiastic without necessarily saying, "Yeah, I'm a Jedi." He's like, he's a Jedi. Clearly, you know of the Force. Good.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, you're very knowledgeable of the Force.
Yeah. So he's playing into it really well. I mean, we even see him like slice the doors, so he has some tech powers. Later on in the episode, we see him flying, so he's a pilot. So he's a well-rounded jack of all trades, in that way. And one thing I thought of too is when he's revealed as Captain Silvo. I don't think we said this in the last episode, but it's very Treasure Planet, right? Like Captain Silver, and then the Wim and Jim Hawkins. So there's a lot of pulls from that as we go through this pirate adventure. But as he's saying, as Wim's defending him as the keeper of the peace, you hear Jod knock out one of the guards. Like, that's a very offensive move, right? There's a beat there where he's like, "Oh, do you guys want to go, where there's people or where there's not?" Which stood out to me. Is very, very weird, but I think it's to kind of do the next bit, which KB says, "Oh, there's someone's coming," and he jumps into the tunnel, and we see like a probe droid fly away and or fly through, and Fern's like, "Oh, I guess KB's a Jedi too, huh? Or has the Force too."
Very skeptical, which is wise,
Right.
Told not to trust anyone. He is anyone.
That's right.
He was in jail. He was arrested.
That's right.
Why should we trust this fellow?
And we get to the part where they're walking through Port Borgo, and I thought it was interesting that they didn't because everyone knows about these kids. Like, word's going around that there's these kids here. They're from Atten, I would assume. because one of the other characters who's going to get introduced talks about it too. But they don't wear any like coverings or hoods like Lord of the Rings Hobbit style to like blend in. I thought there would be a bit of that, and there wasn't. And they're flying in the ferry, and Fern's like, that was too easy.
Yeah, and so I know we mentioned it, but like when I was watching it the first time, in sync, when they transition, I'm like, that was too easy, and she says at the same time, like, okay, at least we're acknowledging it. That's fine.
Yeah. Let's just it was too easy. We're just gonna write it off. We'll say it here, and then we won't think about it, which is good. There's a bit about the Onyx Cinder. The ship is called the Onyx Cinder, based off of like the Lego set. That's where the name comes from. They haven't said it in the show yet. But there's a bit about like it still being like a piece of junk. I think it's like a nod to like the Millennium Falcon thing. But there's dirt still coming off of it and everything. And they're about to launch, and Jod says, hey, we're going to go visit an old friend. She's an expert in star maps and lost planets. And everyone's like, okay, like, who's this? Do we know this character? And they're like, before we leave, we have to get our droid. We have to get SM-33. And he's like, I'm not going back for a droid. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm with you, buddy. I am with you. I'm not going back for a droid either. But Fern's like, fine, I'll go get him. And then Neil's like, yeah, me too. And Wim's like, yeah, me too. And he's like, oh, God, I guess I have to go get him. Because he needs the kids, right?
I like that scene, too, because who is it? Who calls him out for...
Oh, Fern.
That's not a very Jedi... Yeah, Fern's like, that's not a very Jedi thing. Leave no man behind or whatever. He's like, it's not a Jedi thing, and it's a droid. Like,
he's not a person.
And to be honest, Obi-Wan probably would have left him, too. You know?
Very true. I would have left him. But
droid.
Yeah, I don't have any really soft spots for droids. Like SM-33 is actually a cool droid. I actually like seeing him on screen, but for them to risk their life to go get him is crazy.
I mean, it is. If it was like R2 who you've grown with for years, sure. Or like, you know, the Rebels crew for Chopper, sure.
Oh yeah.
But like, they barely met this guy.
Yeah.
He watches out for him, so you know.
Yeah, and you know he's like, well, I need these kids. So I can't have the kids go get them, so I guess I'll go get them. And I like how Jude Law plays that, where Fern is like, I thought Jedi are supposed to like no leave men, and he's like, he's like, hey, shut up, you're bothering me. You know, he's trying to get out of there. He's not trying to stick around. But let me see. I'm looking at my notes.
Yeah, I mean, he goes to find SM-33.
Yeah,
and you know, he goes into that droid scrap heap of old droids, and it's a cool little scene.
Yeah,
I just see a battle droid, and you know, it's just funny when he keeps turning each droid on. They got different things. What did the battle droid say? He was like, "Are we winning?" Or
he said, "Did we win? Did we win?" Yeah. Basically, like doesn't know either. And that's another thing. It might be separatist. Ad might be separatist if you add in a battle droid there. There was one called CZ-D2-9000. That was the one that wakes up from the table. There's a protocol droid that says "Save the Prince." The battle droid, and then he gets to SM-33. He's like, "Are you SM-33?" And he was like, "Who's asking?"
The little rat comes out of his eye again.
Yeah,
like,
the little rat.
I think that's yes.
Yeah, because I think that's yes. Turns him off and puts him in the wheelbarrow. And at this point, there's a character in the shadows where he came from, so someone's watching him. And he's like, "Captain Silvo, is that you?" And Jod pulls out his gun like he's about to blast this guy away. And he's like, "Oh, Ben Pranick, you old blood." And they start chatting it up. And he's like, "Oh, you know, I'm surprised Brutus let you out before the trial." And he's like, "I let myself out." And so like he's like, I did it. I escaped myself."
Yeah.
And just buttering him up, and I'm assuming that the guards were already called, right? He's just kind of like delaying him.
Like it.
But it was a cool little back and forth. I wasn't sure if this character would have more screen time or be a player later, but I don't think so.
Probably.
At this point, too, the kids are arguing about Jod's force abilities. They're like, Neil's like,
and
he floats stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah. And talking about leaving anyways. Like,
oh, right.
Maybe we should just leave this guy.
Yeah, because he goes, "Don't." That was another thing he said when he left. He says, "Don't blast off without me." And then Fern's like, "We should blast off without him."
Yeah.
But even KB is like, we need him. She's like, we don't have any leads. We don't know where to go. So they kind of like, John needs the kids and the kids need John, right?
Yep.
And so they're arguing about his force abilities. Neil's like, but he could float stuff. And she's like, there's so many things. There's repulsor lift, tractor beam, magnets, mirrors, right?
String.
He's
like, good string. Yeah, I like that scene a lot.
And then in the background, John's flying back, ferrying himself to the ship, and they're already like shooting at him, which is crazy because that thing is just like plastic in space.
It seems like it.
So if a blaster goes
shield, man.
yeah, that thing is gonna pop like a balloon, right? So it was very precarious. But he gets back in, and there's a beat where he's like, "Let's go, go, go!" Right? He's pulling SM-33 into the ship, and he says, "Watch this," and then tries to move the ship.
Yeah, very, very swagger. A lot of swagger, and he's like, "Watch this," and just stuck on the old fuel line.
Yeah, the old fuel line. Before? And he's like, let's try. He goes, maybe I can snap it, and he tries to snap it, and it's like hitting other ships and things like that. In the background, actually, there's actually a few Easter eggs of different ships. They have the original design for the Millennium Falcon out there, which is pretty dope. And then they have a Star Tours ship, an older model of the Star Tours ship. So I was like, that's awesome. Kind of cool. But at this point, Brutus is aware. He says, "Arm the cannons." It's Jod, or are they calling him Silvo? I think they're calling him Silvo. So they're like, it's Silvo's escape. And Jod goes, "Hyperdrive." And KB goes, "Isn't it dangerous to go into hyperdrive with things attached?"
When we're attached to something, yeah.
Yeah, and then they show the cannon aiming at it, and they hit hyperdrive. It misses. And it's actually, I really like this scene where the fuel line whips back at the port.
Me too.
And it like destroys some of the port, knocks the guy back. I thought we were going to hear a Wilhelm scream, but we didn't get a Wilhelm scream. We just got a regular death scream.
Would have been the moment, though.
Yeah, sure. It would have been the moment. They just didn't do it. And Brutus is standing his ground. He's not showing he's afraid of all this collapsing stuff. And Jaleel White's character, Gunter, runs up and he's like, "Should we go after him?" And he's like, "Put a bounty on his head because I want him begging like a dog." And he goes, "And bring me those pups." So he's like, he wants all of it. And it was a pretty fun little escape scene. What'd you think?
Yeah, I thought the scene was a lot of fun. I just like when he's driving around trying to get rid of that fuel line. It's chaotic, but it's also, and that sequence, I think maybe had the best piece of score specifically in that scene, the whole episode. Yeah, so I just think the score really shined there. So if anyone wants to go back and check out that specific scene, I thought it was great. But I think it was awesome. The timing of the the blaster cannon firing and them blasting off into the light speed was awesome. And I do like when he goes over to take over the computer from KB, and she does ask, and he doesn't even think about it. He punches a couple things, runs back over, punches the light speed, and that's it.
He's trying to get out of there, man. He's trying to get out of there.
I get it.
So it cuts to the kitchen, and they're waking up SM-33, and they're like, "Oh, he's just turned off." And they turn him on, which is surprising because he got shot in the back and deactivated. So I was expecting some repair, but maybe someone was repairing him down in that little droid section there. But he's like, "Intruder," and they're like, "No, he's a Jedi." Whip's like, "He's a Jedi. He's good."
Even KB was like, he saved us,
Yeah. And Jod's like cooking something up, and he turns around, and there's a beat where he's just eating the food in the bowl. So, which is also really gross. That ship has been down there for possibly millennia. And he's just eating this green. Yeah, he's just eating this green.
He cooked something. He cooked another mouse that was running around.
Oh, that would have been good. That would have been good. I think he tells the droid, he's like, "Clean this up." And like there's a beat where he's like, SM-33 is like looking at him. Like, "What'd you just say to me?"
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
He smacks the bowl down.
Yeah, he just like knocks it off. And then Jod is looking at the skeletons. He pulls out one of the cutlasses and stows it on his hip. And SM-33 comes around and he's like, "What are you looking for?" kind of thing. And here's where Jod tries to confirm that the kids are from Manhattan. He's like, are the kids really from Manhattan? And he's like, kids are from, they're from somewhere. But he's like, I'm not telling you nothing, which I really like that he's already on the side of the kids. Like his loyalty is to his captain and his crew versus this random dude. And he does a little poke. He like pokes him. And it's enough where John's like, ow. And he like looks in his shirt. So I was like, there must have been enough strength to maybe where he thinks he's either bruised or bleeding. And there's a great beat where he's like, he says, I, and then he walks away, and then he comes back and he goes, I.
Yeah, I dig that. I think that SM33 has been great. Oh my gosh, who's voicing him again?
Nick Frost.
Nick Frost.
Yeah.
I will say my one, and I really like this episode. My one gripe again is just that I don't think the theming is done that well with any of the pirate stuff or a lot of the pirate stuff.
Sure.
It was like they just grabbed it out of a Pirates of the Caribbean set and threw it on there.
Yeah.
But I did like that scene too. Yeah, I think that the interaction was interesting. I'm sort of surprised that John didn't off the bat try to, because he was a captain, right? At a point of a large vessel. I'm surprised he didn't try and like challenge for that captainship. Like,
yeah, he might
pull some code, some pirate code. He's like, oh well, he did pull the code.
Right. That would actually be pretty awesome if he does try to commandeer the ship for himself.
Yeah.
We might see it later on, right?
Wouldn't be surprised.
Where it's like, oh, Fern's dead. Well, I'll or not dead, but like she's like not on the ship and he's trying to take it over. And then it's funny because he's SM33 has like weird programming, or like there's something wrong with his programming, maybe because he's old, but he's like repeating stuff. So it was a funny beat for him to repeat the I twice, like for one that he had to repeat it, but like walk back to repeat it instead of just saying I twice, or like I captain kind of thing. So I thought that was I like that joke a lot. But here's where it gets interesting. The kids are eating at the table and they're eating the food and they're just chatting about things. And Neil brings up, he's like, I wonder if our parents are doing something with the great work, right? And he's like, what do your parents do? And Fern says her mom's admin, and then KB's like analysts, and Wim's dad's like an analyst too. Yeah. And they're like, what are they analyzing? And Wim looks at the money and he's like, maybe it's credits. And then they hear Jod coming in and they flip the bowls face down, and Neil faces his bowl face down too, even though he has no credits under his bowl. But I thought that was a little interesting bit.
I don't think we mentioned it this episode, so I need to real quick. Neil Nation, rise up.
Neil Nation.
We will we'll fight for Neil to the death.
Neil for
that's
Neil.
my true captain. Neil with his comb over.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting, and I do think that they're asking these questions that we have, and they're giving us these things to gnaw on and to think about week to week.
Yeah.
What are they analyzing? And those credits seem to be like it's got to be something with the money.
Yeah.
With the credits, obviously, this whole thing is about a treasure planet, right?
Yeah.
But I do like how that scene. He's like, well, when he comes in, he's like, it's time for bed, and that's such a staple for kids. Where I'm not even tired, knocked out.
Yeah.
Knocked out.
Before we move on, I don't know if you felt this way, but the table and the way it was laid out, it reminded me of Anakin and Padme in episode 1.
I didn't even think about that, but that's cool.
Yeah, because
I didn't put that together.
Isn't there a scene where she's like talking to him, and he's kind of like, oh, he goes, I'm so cold. He's like, I'm so cold, and because they're in the ship, right, the Naboo ship. Yeah. So I gotta look back at episode 1 to see if there's a correlation of how they formatted.
Same table, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the same table. It felt like very familiar. And my brain went there. But yeah, they're going to bed. And again, it's paralleling the relationship not as like parent and kids, but how they need each other. Where he's keeping an eye on them, and KB is not sleeping. And I was like, does she just sleep that way? That was my first thought.
Same.
I thought he was gonna go like this.
That's what I expected also.
But she's awake, and she's like, my calculations, like the odds of you being a Jedi, it's very low, is the gist. And I think at this point he says, you got to trust your gut, right?
Yep.
Because he's like, don't trust the
all things can be calculated,
Yeah, not everything can be calculated, and as he says, trust your gut. He turns off the lights with the Force, and like it feels so like it's reminiscent of Kumail Nanjiani using the Force, quote unquote, the Force, and like doing things. But he does have the Force,
Yeah.
but it just seems so corny, right?
Yeah, he used it in ways that you remember Anakin like, oh, Master Obi-Wan would kill me if he knew I was doing this when he's cutting the
Cutting the
pear
pear.
or whatever. He's doing those things where it's like it doesn't seem very Jedi-like to.
Yeah,
Not that they wouldn't do it, but in the way that he does.
yeah. It just seems like kind of like one of the worst ways to use the Force, I guess.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, they talked about this is they're going to a moon, and so it cuts to where they show the planet. I really like this planet moon situation a lot, but the planet is a great backdrop, and then we get like different music that we're used to in Star Wars. It's like a theremin, a harmonic kind of thing, very reminiscent of like old space shows, black and white. That was kind of like the vibe I was getting. What do you think about that?
I mean, I did think that the planet and the moon it was well shot.
Yeah.
Like even the shots they had once they deboarded the ship.
Yeah.
We're walking along the surface of the moon.
Yeah, and the silhouettes.
It's really good. Yeah, good shots. The score
Yeah.
was awesome. Again, I'm gonna keep mentioning the score, but it was interesting. He brought the whole clan with him. I wasn't sure if he was gonna bring everybody along.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
he told SM-33 stay behind, and told him, hey, this friend, she might stab us in the back. Like, stab us in the back.
Well, yeah, he's like, he's not trustworthy, and he wants the kids to trust him, and so it was interesting that he's like, hey, we can't trust this person we're gonna see. I'm the one telling you guys the truth. Everybody else is lying to you, just like completely gaslighting these kids,
setting the stage.
The stage. He's like, even though she's my friend, I don't trust her, kind of thing. And they go up to the door and they knock, and then we get one of those like eyeball droids coming out of the door, and then it's like feels very silly, but there's like three. There's one here and one here and one here, and it's Kim. I have the closed captioning on. It's like KH''YMM, like the longest way you can probably spell Kim.
Possibly named Kim, yeah.
And she's like, Crimson Jack. And they're like, who's Crimson Jack?
That doesn't sound like a pirate.
Yeah. I was like, that's a interesting name. Crimson Jack, though, is mentioned in comic books, and then also a character that they used for the Halcyon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I'm wondering if it's a moniker that people use, or if it's actually Jod Nana Wood, but as Crimson Jack and Halcyon. And so it seems very close to where they would pull somebody like that to use. So I don't know. But the Crimson Jack in the comic books, from the illustration, he's like red hair and red beard. But this Jude Law's shaved, so it could be the same character.
Maybe it killed him and used the name,
Maybe.
Who knows?
Like a Dread Pirate, a Princess Bride pull, and I can't think of the name. Dang it. If you know in the comments, please let us know.
Yeah.
Because I was like, Dread Pirate Wesley? I was like, that's his real name.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to pull that one.
But yeah, so Kim is actually played by, I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right, Alia Shawkat. She played Maybe in Arrested Development, and they mentioned that she's in The Old Man, and you recommended that show recently, I think.
I did.
Yeah.
Also, it's and that makes sense. Made by John Watts. Yeah, Old Man. It's very fun. Not really, but it's very different. It's very dark, and it's a thriller. Jeff Bridges. It's great.
Dread Pirate Roberts, is that the name? I'm gonna look it up. It's gonna bother me too much. Dread Pirate Robert. Yep. Dread Pirate Roberts. Nailed it. Finally, like I pulled it. But yeah, so it's Kim. They walk into her observatory, and he's like, "Oh, you cleaned up the place," even though it's not clean. And you could assume that she's like a collector, a hoarder. She says, she goes, "Oh, yeah, trinkets and tokens from 1,000 different worlds." And I was like, I can relate.
Also,
I
will say real quick, like when they arrive, when they clock him on the cameras,
Yes.
Like, yep, that's definitely him. You know, we got to protect these kids. We don't know, like, why are there kids with him? So they're like, we're dispatching to you. You just got to hold on.
Yeah.
So obviously, it seems like she seems like a collector. He's obviously screwed her over before.
Right.
Because it's like, I wouldn't return if I didn't have something good.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like she's like a swashbuckling
No.
owl here. She's just, which I thought was interesting. I think we'll hear from her again perhaps at some point.
Yeah, I think so. It sucks because I was going to mention before when they said, oh, we're going to visit my friend. Disney Plus has this character, Kim, on the screen when you enter episode 3. And I'm like, I wish they didn't spoil it because I wasn't sure when this character would show up. But
I notice it.
Oh, yeah. You just go in and click, which I should have done. But I saw it in my peripherals or whatever.
I get you. Believe me.
But I like the design of it. It's like an owl or cat or like an otter. A very friendly looking. It has the same cybernetic thing on the back of its head, which it reminded me of like Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy, where we're like, oh, here's a creature that's probably been experimented on of some kind, and now it has its own sentience. And it's very, this character's very intelligent. So I like it. I think it's also being compared to like Maz Kanata in a way.
Yep, that was my initial connection too. I was like, this feels like a Maz adjacent character, which I liked.
Yeah, and I wish we got more Maz in Star Wars.
Me too.
So hopefully we'll see Maz again soon. But yeah, so they mention he's like they're from Aten, and she goes, "Whoa, this is an astrogation problem," and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I just wrote a couple of little phrases. It was, this planet was purposely hidden from the galaxy, a jewel of the old republic. There was 9 planets, all were destroyed except for this one. This one was hidden. And she opens up a scroll. There's a bunch of Arabic on the side, and I think some people have decoded some of it, but a lot of it's just random letters too.
Yep. I was starting to read it. I paused it. And I'm like, I don't know. This seems like gibberish. Some of it. It was a cool looking scroll. I'll tell you that.
Cool. Yeah, I would put it up on my wall if they have it at Celebration or poster. But she said Aten only exists in children's stories, pirate shanties, and rumors believed by fools. And it zooms in on our friend Jod there.
I do like though that she seems to be the first, other than him. Like he seems to believe it, but it's like very few actually believe that Aten is real, and she seems to know for a fact that it's real. It's like it's not a fairy tale. It is a fairy tale, but it became that.
Yeah,
and she has the things to prove it in a way.
Yeah, I love how she goes. We can find it by the astronomical feature. I used to watch a lot of film theory on YouTube. He's retired it. He's not doing it, but I hope they'll touch on it. But I was like, oh yeah, you could probably figure out what planet is based on the biomes, like what planets it's near. Can you like they were doing in the episode where she's like, what other planets can you see? And they're like, oh well, it's a barrier and it's covered. We can't see it there. And they're like, well, we've learned about did they say Coruscant? They said we've learned about Coruscant and Alderaan. And then this is where she remarks that you guys missed the war. And they're like, what war? And I'm like, interesting.
That's a big
interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting.
So I'm thinking about it now. They don't know about the Clone Wars either then.
No, it doesn't seem like it.
Or the Galactic Civil War.
I guess they could have, but not really, no.
Mm-mm. They don't know about it.
Alderaan was still around, but it seems like, that would be. It doesn't seem like they know about any of that. Yeah,
so maybe this. I think we could say maybe High Republic. Well, there was a war even during the High Republic times.
Yeah,
there's a war during Old Republic.
Because they mentioned Alderaan, it's like, oh, you missed the war.
Yeah, well, that Galactic War. Yeah.
I think if you knew about that war, it'd be like, oh, well, yeah, Alderaan got destroyed. We know. So it's just, I think that it's ambiguous in a good way. It's not like if they would have told us which republic they have been talking about the whole time, that would have been fine. But I like that they're sprinkling the crumbs in a way.
Yeah.
It make us think. It keeps it engaging.
Yeah.
Makes me excited for the next one.
For sure. I mean, they're definitely talking about the Galactic Civil War, but yeah, my mind went to do they know about the Clone Wars? But they're talking about Alderaan specifically as a planet that was destroyed, which doesn't happen very much. But she also said the description that was given, they narrowed it down to 10,000 worlds. And Fern's like, oh God, like we're never gonna find it. And KB's like, well, that's like 1%. Like we got it down to 1%. We could go home if we just kind of stick it out. And Fern's turning around with her backpack, and Kim gets excited because the symbols. Oh, those were the polymerish numerals that she was analyzing, and she puts it into a computer. It starts analyzing the data, and she's like, oh, with these we could figure it out. And she says something about time, like this should be like fairly easy. And she's like, I mean, this might take a while. And Jod's like, are you stalling? And he's like, no, I'm not stalling at all. And he like turns on her data pad or whatever, and it's the X-Wings chiming in. And I was like, this is a little too convenient, because they would, if they already know he's like within the vicinity, they shouldn't be like reaching out too much. But it's just to get the narrative going. And he pulls his blaster out, and she's like, you're not gonna kill me in front of these kids, are you?
He starts pulling the trigger, man. And she had some fight, it was small little owl, but he pulls the blaster, and I think, I'm trying to remember, I think she swoops in on him or flies away. And then he actually starts trying to shoot her. Because he tells her to call him off. He's like, tell those goons to get out of here. And she starts telling the kids, like, Crimson Jack's a scoundrel, don't trust him. And he's like, see, I told you she's trying to stab us in the back, and all this, the back and forth. Yeah. She says he'll betray you. And he grabs her, and I think he throws her into the books and stuff. And then he shoots. Yeah, and he shoots the computer, probably for communications or the coordinates, and he takes the coordinate chip out, and he's like, we got to go. And KB sticks around, and she's like, are you okay? And then and Kim's like, did he tell you to like trust your gut? She's like trust your head. Use your head. Get the truth. Yeah. Get the truth. And she says, if you ever need help, you can call me anytime. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So maybe we might see Kim in a future episode here. But they run back to the ship, and it's actually funny because Neil falls. Dude, I was laughing so much.
I don't know if that was on purpose, like they directed him to fall, or if he just fell. And they start pressing Jack here. KB tries to communicate with the X-Wings with her loud, I don't know, like
some
could
sort
vocalize.
Of speaker megaphone thing. I don't know what she's doing, but
yeah, she did that in episode 1. They're asking him to tell us who you really are. Everyone's yelling the truth. Tell us the truth. And he says, I'm just like you. I'm lost. I'm alone. And they're like, but you're a Jedi.
Weak answer, man. You didn't tell him anything.
I never said I was that. And so he goes, I'll make a deal with you. He goes, I'll get you home, do the right thing, get a reward, partnership. And KB's like, no, not a partnership. You work for us, which is also reminiscent from the first episode where they're like, you'll be our employee, right?
Yep.
They claimsied him, and he's like, fine.
They did claimsy him.
Deal. I thought this was interesting. I was like, when he said, I'm like you, I'm alone, I was wondering, I'm like, was Jod actually from Atten? And then accidentally got pulled out. Very reminiscent to like Star-Lord. You get abducted and you actually don't know how to get back home. I thought that would be something that they would pull, but I don't think that's where it's going.
I don't think so either, but that'd be interesting. But I don't think they're going that way. But I didn't think about that.
Yeah, that was one thing my mind went to, is like when he said, "I'm just like you," but I think he would have said, "I'm also from Manhattan" already.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get back home. It would be a great lie, but then they would probably like test him on it. He'd be like, I don't know. At this point, they run into the ship. Oh yeah, so he puts Neil's on pilot, and Wim's like, why does Neil get to be pilot? So this part felt like a parent who didn't want to deal with their kids anymore, and they're just chirping, and he's like, gosh. And he puts Fern on a gunner, Win on governor. And then KB ends up being engineer. I was like, Smuggler's Run. I see Smuggler's Run quite a bit here. And I'm wondering if we'll get a Skeleton Crew skin on Smuggler's Run.
I bet we will.
Yeah.
Depending on the success of the show.
Depending on the success of the show. They can still do it regardless of the success. But I thought it was cool. And I thought it was funny that the kids were fine shooting at X-Wings.
Yeah, it was interesting.
I guess they don't know the relationship of the Republic, the X-Wing, because we do as the audience, right? Yep. But he just said that they're goons of Kim, and besides KB having already showing that good morale, because even previously in previous episodes, she's like, oh, we were pranking you, and don't be mean. She was really the only one kind of like not having a violent role in this
I know he told him just keep him back, he didn't tell him to shoot him down.
Okay.
He was specifically like just keep him back, let him know that but I did when Wim logged on, I'm like, is Wim about to both this thing
I got him. That's what I thought this was gonna happen.
I thought that was gonna happen too.
Yeah.
Oh my god, Wim's about to get his first notch on his bandolier.
Yeah. I was like, is this kid about to murder someone? But they don't. And then even the X-Wings just do they shoot one of the engines, and it looks like it just kind of stasis locks it or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when the X-Wing, they actually get out, I'm jumping ahead. The ship drags, and it causes like a dust cloud, so the X-Wings can't see, the kids can't see to shoot them. And they get to a point where they can go vertical, more towards the atmosphere, and then being able to light speed out again. KB gets to punch it, and the X-Wings land, and Kim's like, what happened? And they're like, it was too risky because there's kids inside. So the good morality of the New Republic still exists here with this rogue squadron. And he said, any idea where they're headed? She goes, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. And that's where we get the credits. I was wondering if that was going to be Carson Teva or one of the other pilots we've seen. Trapper Wolf, Dave Filoni takes his helmet off, puts his...
I thought for sure it's going to be one of those group of pilots.
Could have been Zeb, could have been anybody, right? Maybe Gina Carano comes back. I don't know.
No way. But we only saw one of them, right? Or
it was only one.
Both pilots?
No, it was just one.
So we never know.
Yeah,
maybe they couldn't get him for that day, and we'll just get around it.
It looked like a CG person too, by the way.
Yeah.
I was like, "Where's this? This is weird." But anyway,
we had you know what? I really like this episode. I told you it's my favorite so far, but I do still feel like Wim. It seems like he seemed like the top, like the main kid at first. He really has nothing to do. He really doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
So far in the show, to be honest, I do find it odd. I hope. I don't. Yeah, he's definitely the character I'm least interested in. Yeah. But it just feels weird because the way they presented in the beginning, it felt like, okay, he's going to be the main kid. Yeah. But it almost feels like, I don't know if you've seen the last Pirates of the Caribbean movie. It's not very good. Jack Sparrow's in the movie, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, Jack Sparrow's back. You could take him out of the movie and nothing changes. He does nothing for it, but it's still like, oh, that's the main guy. It's the pirate. And I know that's not something like, hey, guess what we're referencing? Jack Sparrow not being relevant. But I do wonder if they'll have him do anything with 3 episodes in. And I still feel like he hasn't contributed at all, except for to be almost our eyes.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
I get what you're saying. I still think that Wim is the bright-eyed, kind of like dumb one. I think he'll still have an arc. Right. Yeah. Where I think this felt more of like a KB episode, right? We're focusing on what KB's abilities are, and how intuitive she is, because she had the conversation with Kim. She was the one who sussed out the droid. She's the one like doing the engineering thing. So I felt like it was more a KB, because even Neil doesn't really have much to do. He's providing comic relief. And he's
that was
perfect.
His thing though. But he's always been. It wasn't like he's always just the best friend. He's the one who tags along. And he captured our hearts. But
100%. Even his snoring. I forgot to mention his snoring while they were sleeping.
If Neil needs a cosigner on like a new car, come to me, man. I got you.
It's Neil for Neil. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think if anything, what might happen is they'll eventually give Neil force power, or not Neil. They'll give Wim force powers.
Ooh,
That's my
maybe.
guess. That's my
Yeah.
guess. Because if
I
you want
wouldn't
it
be
that bad, Disney usually gives it.
They do.
How crazy would it be if Neil gets it and then Wim has to become the friend who has to like support his friend?
I'd be. You know what? Neil doesn't even need it. He didn't even need it.
I have a random question for you that really doesn't have anything to do with these episodes.
Sure.
Have you thought about what happened to Wim's mom?
Nope. Not at all. But I totally forgot about that, man, to be honest.
Yeah. I thought about it now.
Maybe she knew something. Who knows? I mean, look, I wouldn't be surprised because when you look at Wim, typically in shows, movies, when you write things, they take after at least one of their parents. Maybe she got too inquisitive. She saw something she wasn't supposed to. She learned something she wasn't supposed to. I wouldn't be surprised because Wim is so adventurous and he's so curious. And his dad doesn't seem like any of that.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. I think she left.
Maybe
she left the planet or couldn't find her way back, you know?
Yeah. Oh, man. I don't want... See, we're 3 episodes in. I hope we don't get some random subplot, though, that takes like an episode and a half of, oh, it's my mom. You know?
Maybe a season 2 thing.
Maybe.
Hey,
Maybe
we never found what happened to Cassie and sister. We don't know what happened to Cassie and sister.
No, we did not. That's a cruel galaxy out there.
I don't think Cassie and sister is going to exist anywhere, to be perfectly honest. Maybe in a comic book or a novelization of Andor, but that is a different show.
They're going to Mandalorian us with it. Where it's like, oh, the Mandalorian. You thought Andor was Cassian Andor? No, this season 2's his sister.
Bryce Dallas Howard is directing an episode, and I was like, is this going to be a Mando episode somewhere in the mix of Skeleton Crew? I'm really enjoying the show. I'm looking forward to next week. It's going to be sad when it's over because I don't know if we're going to get a season 2. I hope so. I hope as the show goes, we get more viewership because I think people will like to binge it. I think some people are going to binge it. And the holiday season, people are busy. So I'm not super surprised that it doesn't have higher viewership. There's a bunch of things out right now, especially like the movies, and there's always something to watch on TV. So maybe when we get into January, it'll hit a big finale.
Let's hope.
Let's hope. Well, that being said, where can people find you, Eli?
You can find me at the Fan Awakens everywhere. That's pretty much it.
Yes, sir. And you can also find reigncore everywhere. Check out the links in the description. Please comment what your theories are on the show. If you're enjoying the show, we would love to interact with you. Definitely hit up Eli on Instagram and me as well in the DMs, and we'll be happy to talk to you and hear you out there. With that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of your galactic day. Punch it, Chewie. Boom. We're out of here.